Millionaire sees his ex-wife homeless. What he does next has the internet divided. Marcus Holbrook never imagined he'd see his ex-wife living on the cold streets. As he stepped out of his chauffeured sedan in downtown Sycamore Falls, his gaze fell upon a figure huddled under a tattered blanket. The shock rooted him to the sidewalk. There, clinging to threads of dignity in the biting wind, was Charlotte, the woman he once loved and vowed to spend the rest of his life with. Time froze as shame and regret collided in Marcus's chest. Could it really be her? How had she fallen so low? And most hauntingly, what was he supposed to do next? Marcus Holbrook was not born into wealth, and if you'd asked him 5 years ago where he saw his future, he would have offered a humble picture: a modest house, a well-tended garden, evenings spent in conversation with Charlotte, his then wife, and maybe a child on the way. Instead, he found himself rocketing through life at breakneck speed after stumbling upon a revolutionary piece of technology. The idea had begun as a side project in a cramped garage, a little hobby that he never dreamed would sell. But 6 months after his first pitch to a group of venture capitalists, he was catapulted into a realm of money and status that he neither expected nor felt entirely prepared for. Charlotte, on the other hand, had once shared his dream: the little house, the picket fence, and perhaps starting a small business of her own, a floral shop or a photography studio. She was an artist at heart, filled with a tender, creative spirit. Marcus fell in love with her during their junior year of college at Sycamore University. He'd been smitten by how she managed to turn every dull conversation into something vibrant, how she saw potential in the simplest, most overlooked details, like the petals of a nearly wilted daisy or the fleeting colors of sunset. When they married at 24, their future felt boundless, even if their bank accounts did not. But fame and fortune have a way of warping priorities. As Marcus's company soared in value, his hours grew longer, and the attention he once reserved for Charlotte dwindled. At first, she tried to adapt, urging him to spend more time at home, reminding him of their once cozy life. Eventually, a gulf formed between them. Charlotte felt ignored, and Marcus felt pressured. They argued in whispers at first, then in raised voices. In the final months, their marriage became a lonely echo in a grand, empty home, two people drifting in separate orbits. He told himself they just needed to push through the tough times until the business stabilized. But success only magnified his ambition, fueling an obsession to grow bigger, faster, more powerful. Over time, the dinners they shared turned into quick conversations via text messages. Charlotte found herself alone in bed night after night, staring at the cold emptiness of her side of the mattress. Marcus and Charlotte parted ways almost 3 years before this fateful winter day. The divorce had been complicated, especially since he skyrocketed to millionaire status right when their relationship was at its most fragile. Charlotte insisted she wanted none of his money. She claimed she wanted her independence and her dignity. The lawyers nodded, but privately, everyone was astonished by her choice. She walked away with a small settlement, refusing alimony, wanting only to start fresh. Marcus respected that wish, although confusion pricked at him. She was giving up a life of comfort for reasons he couldn't fully understand at the time. Neither of them bothered to maintain contact after the final signatures. It was a clean break that left behind a lingering sense of unfinished business. Now, standing in the bone-chilling wind by his sleek black sedan, Marcus saw the ghost of his past collapsed on the sidewalk. Charlotte, with disheveled hair, wearing mismatched layers of clothes that barely protected her from the cold. Her once bright eyes seemed dulled by hardship. The last memory he had of her was an image of resilience, a woman determined to carve her own path in life. Yet here she was, looking lost and forlorn. Should he approach her? Should he pretend he never saw her? A roiling blend of guilt and concern twisted in his stomach. He hadn't realized how much he had missed her, or at least the version of her that still danced in his memories. Marcus snapped back to reality when his driver, Jonah, gently nudged him on the shoulder. "Is everything all right, sir?" Jonah asked, concern etched on his face. Marcus shook his head to clear the haze. Without answering, Marcus stepped forward, the crunch of salted gravel underfoot, echoing in the winter air. The street was busier than usual for a frigid afternoon, with bustling pedestrians who barely noticed the huddled woman. The crowd parted around her as if she were an inconvenient obstacle, an uncomfortable reminder of a reality nobody wanted to look at too closely. "Charlotte?" he whispered, crouching beside her. The name felt foreign on his tongue, an echo from a life once intimately familiar. She didn't respond. Her eyes were closed, her chapped lips parted slightly as she breathed shallowly. Marcus wondered if she was conscious at all. Under the tangle of dirty blankets, her fingers were trembling, her face pale. Urgency thudded through his veins. He gently pressed the back of his hand to her cheek. It was icy. "Charlotte?" he repeated, louder this time. A faint flicker of recognition crossed her features, and she blinked, confusion contorting her expression. She opened her mouth, but her voice, hoarse from disuse, or perhaps from the raw wind, barely formed words. Marcus glanced around, worried that she might be severely hypothermic. The pitying stares of a few passers-by made him feel exposed, as if this moment of personal crisis was happening in a spotlight. Jonah hovered, uncertain about whether to intervene. Marcus took a trembling breath and made a swift decision. He peeled off his expensive wool coat and wrapped it around Charlotte. Time seemed to stretch. He vaguely sensed the bright neon signage of nearby cafes and shops, the roar of a bus pulling up to the curb. The memories he'd tried to forget came rushing back, swirling in his head like a storm. He remembered Charlotte's laugh, the curve of her smile when she found a new painting technique that excited her. He remembered her tears when she felt neglected. He remembered the final fight in their cavernous living room, where her pleas for understanding crashed against his unrelenting ambition. Catching a glimpse of her face under the coat, Marcus almost didn't recognize her. Hardship had carved lines into her features. There was a bruised discoloration on her left temple, mostly hidden by her ragged hair, and faint scars around her wrists. Even though it had been years, the shock that this was indeed Charlotte stung like acid. He helped her to her feet, noticing how frail she felt in his arms. Her legs wobbled under her slight weight, but she managed to stand, leaning into him for support. A single tear glistened in the corner of her eye. "Let me help you," Marcus said, unsure of how to phrase anything else. A swirl of conflicting thoughts flooded him. Gratitude that she was alive, anger at himself for not checking in on her, and sheer bewilderment at how drastically her life had unraveled. With Jonah's assistance, Marcus guided Charlotte into the sedan. The heated leather seats must have felt like a dream to her, because she let out a shaky, almost inaudible sigh of relief. Marcus slid in next to her, telling Jonah to drive to his penthouse. He lived only 15 minutes away, in one of the highest towers that overlooked the city. As they pulled into traffic, Marcus found himself glancing constantly at her slumped figure. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. He wanted to say a million things, ask 1,000 questions, but he couldn't find the words. The weight of guilt, regret, and heartbreak pinned him down. Instead, he offered her bottled water from the console and watched as she sipped it slowly, wincing at every movement. That's how they rode, side by side, two ex-lovers thrown together by circumstances neither fully understood. Outside, the city lights danced in the early twilight, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the back seat. Marcus's penthouse was a monument to modern luxury, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a sweeping panoramic view of Sycamore Falls. The furniture, all handcrafted, was arranged in a minimalist style that emphasized open space. The interior exuded success and power qualities Marcus had worked relentlessly to secure. But as Jonah helped Charlotte inside, her frail body trembling, Marcus realized how empty and cold his home felt compared to her dire need. They guided Charlotte to the living room couch, Her eyes darted around, taking in the sleek lines and expensive decor, but her expression revealed neither envy nor admiration. If anything, she looked overwhelmed. "Can we get some blankets?" Marcus asked Jonah, who nodded and hurried off. Marcus settled beside Charlotte, carefully maintaining a short distance so as not to crowd her. He could hear the ticking of the clock, each second an agonizing reminder that he needed to speak, but didn't know how to begin. Finally, Charlotte swallowed, as if gathering the courage to speak. "Marcus." Her voice was weak, but threaded with a faint sense of resolve. "Thank you." He could barely keep his composure. Seeing her so vulnerable opened the floodgates of memories. His mind flashed to the day they sold their first painting of hers at a local gallery fundraiser, the day they picnicked by the river and talked about dreams of traveling through Europe. He also remembered the day she left, her eyes filled with tears, suitcase clutched in a trembling hand. "I don't even know where to start," he said, swallowing hard. Charlotte, what happened to you?" She leaned her head back against the couch, letting out a shaky exhale. Her voice trembled with each word. "It's a long story, and not a pretty one." Before he could press further, Jonah returned with blankets and a cup of hot tea. Charlotte clasped the mug in both hands, cherishing its warmth. Marcus waited, tension knotting in his stomach. This was too surreal. Here was the woman he once spent countless nights talking with, the woman he thought he'd build a future with, now in his living room, homeless and fragile. "I left you because," she began, her eyes flitting away from his. "I couldn't breathe in the life we were creating. Or maybe the life you were creating. I felt like I was disappearing." Her words stung, but he knew they were true. "I never intended. I know you didn't," she interjected, her tone softer than he expected. "It just happened. And then, after the divorce, I tried to start fresh. I really did. I got an apartment on the other side of town. I even found a small job at a gallery." Marcus's heart pounded. He wanted to reach out, to hold her hand, to comfort her the way he once might have, but something kept him locked in place, a mix of fear, shame, and uncertainty. She continued, "Things were okay for a while. Then I got in over my head with a business venture. My trust in people." She paused, voice catching on the edge of a painful memory. "I was scammed by a man I thought was helping me set up a small art shop. I lost almost everything, and I couldn't turn to you. After what happened." He noticed tears gathering in her eyes, but she quickly brushed them away, determined not to break down. "Then I lost the apartment. I tried to couch surf. Before I knew it, I was on the street. It's been months." She swallowed hard, glancing down at her ragged clothing. "I'm sorry you had to see me like this." Marcus's chest ached. Anger flared, anger that someone had scammed her, anger that she hadn't felt comfortable reaching out to him, and anger at himself for not wondering how she was doing. But beneath that anger lay a sea of regret. "You don't have to be sorry," he said softly. "I should be the one apologizing. Charlotte, the first so sorry for everything." Their eyes locked in a moment that felt heavier than the spacious penthouse walls could contain. He saw years of pain in her gaze, but also a faint, flickering hope. For the first time in a long while, Marcus felt he was seeing the real Charlotte, stripped of pretense and pride. "Get some rest," he urged gently. "We'll figure out the rest later." She hesitated, then nodded, allowing him to guide her to a guest bedroom. She took in the sight of the queen-size bed with its plush blankets and crisp sheets. Marcus watched her expression, expecting some sign of relief. Instead, she burst into quiet tears. "I haven't slept in a real bed in forever," she whispered, hugging the blankets like a precious gift. Marcus retreated, leaving her to collect herself in privacy, his heart twisting painfully at the image of her tears. Marcus spent the night on the living room couch, unable to sleep. He flipped through social media feeds and the stock market updates, searching for something to distract him from the emotional upheaval. But every flicker of the screen reminded him of the stark difference between his opulent life and Charlotte's predicament. By dawn, he had made a decision. He placed calls to his personal physician and a trusted therapist, setting up discreet appointments to help Charlotte. He rummaged through the penthouse closets for clothes she might wear temporarily. Marcus was a man of action, so once he committed to helping her, he intended to do it thoroughly. That morning, Charlotte emerged from the guest room wearing some of his sweats, the sleeves and pant legs rolled up comically. There was a timid gratitude in her eyes. She offered a small, tentative smile that momentarily softened the lines of her face. They ate breakfast at the glass-topped dining table overlooking the city. Marcus ordered a simple spread: scrambled eggs, toast, fruit, and coffee, knowing Charlotte's system probably wouldn't handle anything too heavy. She picked at the food nervously, as if worried she might be intruding. "I set up a doctor's appointment," Marcus said finally, "just to make sure you're okay." "And maybe we can see about Marcus," she interrupted, her voice still raspy. "Thank you, but I'm not here to burden you. I appreciate everything you've done, but—" He raised a hand to stop her. "You're not a burden. Please, let me help." She lowered her eyes to the plate. Her silence spoke volumes. She was caught between gratitude and guilt, or perhaps fear that she was surrendering too much control. Marcus remembered how fiercely independent she'd always been. That was part of the reason she walked away from his wealth in the first place. They finished the meal in awkward silence. Charlotte insisted on doing the dishes, despite Marcus's protests that the maid service would handle it. He watched her from a distance, recalling the easy camaraderie they once shared in a cramped college apartment, where they'd wash dishes side by side, teasing each other about who left the bigger mess. Marcus's personal physician, Dr. Eva Martinez, arrived at the penthouse around midday, carrying a discreet black bag. She was in her early 50s, with kind eyes that betrayed her concern for Charlotte. The moment she walked in, Marcus gave them privacy, pacing the length of the living room while Dr. Martinez examined Charlotte in the guest room. He couldn't focus on his work calls or the endless stream of emails waiting in his inbox. Every minute felt excruciatingly long. Finally, Dr. Martinez stepped out, her face calm but serious. "Physically, she's extremely malnourished and dehydrated," she explained in a low tone. "There's also evidence of chronic stress. Her blood pressure is high for someone her age. She needs rest, proper nutrition, and possibly some ongoing therapy. If you can provide a stable environment, that would be best for now, at least until she's stronger." Marcus pressed his lips together. "Of course, anything she needs, Doctor." Martinez placed a reassuring hand on Marcus's arm. "I'll check in again soon, but if she experiences any severe pain or anything unusual, call me right away. And I strongly recommend a psychological evaluation. She's likely been through significant trauma." Marcus felt his hands shaking slightly as he walked her to the door. "Thank you, Doctor." Once she was gone, Marcus peeked into the guest room. Charlotte was lying against the pillows, staring at the ceiling. There was a vulnerability in her expression that Marcus had never seen before. It struck him that she might be feeling more alone now than she ever had on the streets, because she was surrounded by the material comfort she once deliberately left behind. "I'm sorry," she said quietly when she noticed him. "I never wanted to come back into your life like this." He stepped inside, leaning against the door frame. "I'm not sorry," he replied, surprising himself with his own honesty. "Not if it means I get to help you." Their eyes locked again, a moment of understanding passing between them, but it was tinged with sadness, like they both recognized the distance that stretched between who they were then and who they had become now. Word of Marcus's charitable act spread faster than he anticipated. One onlooker downtown had snapped a picture of him wrapping his coat around a homeless woman, a picture that quickly ended up on social media platforms. Initially, the story painted him as a kind-hearted millionaire, aiding a random homeless individual. Comments flooded in, praising his generosity. But everything changed when a local blogger recognized the woman in the photo as Charlotte Green, whose maiden name was well known among a small circle of local artists. Speculation ignited. That's actually his ex-wife. The narrative shifted from a heartwarming rescue to a brewing controversy. Some lauded Marcus for stepping up to help someone he once loved, while others accused him of using the situation for publicity. Conspiracy theories abounded. Maybe it's staged. He just wants social media sympathy. He owes her that much, considering how he got rich. The internet, in all its divisiveness, became a battleground of opinions, each user certain of their moral high ground. Marcus tried to ignore the noise at first, but it was impossible. Reporters started lingering outside the building, hoping to catch a glimpse of Charlotte or pry into their personal business. Paparazzi staked out corners, and random online personalities posted update videos speculating on the next developments. The story spread beyond Sycamore Falls. Even national outlets picked it up. Millionaire sees ex-wife homeless, takes her in, a real second chance, or just another PR stunt. Within days, it seemed everyone had formed an opinion on Marcus's motives. At first, Charlotte was unaware of the media storm. She focused on her recovery, eating balanced meals, taking vitamins Dr. Martinez prescribed, and sleeping in a warm bed. But as her strength returned, so did her awareness of the world around her. Sitting on the couch one evening, Charlotte flipped through the channels and froze at a news segment covering her story. She paled, fumbling for the remote. The reporter's voice echoed through the penthouse. Speculation continues to grow about Marcus Holbrook's true intentions. She clicked the TV off, her fingers trembling. Marcus hovered in the doorway, feeling a knot in his chest. "I was going to tell you," he admitted, stepping forward. "The media picked up our story. Someone took a photo." Charlotte's eyes flashed with alarm. "Are they hounding you?" He nodded. "They're camped downstairs. Yes, my PR team is trying to keep them away. But it's gotten big, Charlotte. People are. They're saying all sorts of things." She stood up, wincing slightly from lingering aches. "I don't want to cause you trouble. Maybe I should leave." He quickly moved closer, his voice firm. "You're not going anywhere. This media frenzy will blow over. We'll handle it." Her eyes glistened with tears. "But I don't want my story, our past, becoming someone's gossip. I never asked for this." Marcus gently placed a hand on her shoulder. She flinched, then relaxed a bit, tears escaping despite her attempt to hold them back. "I know," he whispered, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect you." In that moment, the doorbell rang, echoing through the penthouse. They exchanged worried looks. Marcus glanced at his phone. His security detail had messaged earlier, warning about persistent reporters. With a sigh, he moved to answer the door. A slender woman dressed in a crisp suit stood outside, her expression polite but resolute. "Mr. Holbrook, I'm Anna Caldwell with Sycamore Star News. I'm sorry to bother you at home, but we'd like to request an interview. We believe your story could inspire." Marcus tried to keep his frustration in check. "I'm not interested in giving any interviews." He began to close the door, but the woman spoke again. "Your ex-wife deserves a voice too," Anna said softly. "Maybe she wants to speak about her experiences." "The public, she doesn't want to talk," Marcus snapped, raising his voice. "And the public doesn't deserve anything. Please leave." He shut the door firmly, his heart pounding. When he turned around, Charlotte was leaning against the wall, watching him. Their gazes locked, and for a fleeting second, a silent understanding passed between them. This was only the beginning of the storm. That night, Charlotte admitted she couldn't stay cooped up in the penthouse forever. Her pride, or what was left of it, refused to let her hide. Marcus arranged a car and driver for her to visit the old side of town where she once lived. Though Jonah accompanied her for security, paparazzi still followed, snapping photos from a distance. Charlotte returned with a weight in her eyes that seemed heavier than before. Marcus prepared tea, a habit he'd adopted as a gesture of care since her return. As she sipped it, he asked gently, "Everything okay?" She set the mug down, staring into the steam. "I tried to go back to the gallery that once employed me. It's shut down. The owner moved to another state. The building's boarded up." Marcus frowned, a pang of regret surfacing. He should have kept in touch, or at least known that the gallery closed. He'd once bought a painting there to support Charlotte's art. They said I could come get my final paycheck, but that was months ago. She let out a hollow laugh. I never did. Now it's too late. Marcus weighed his next words carefully. There's something else bothering you. Charlotte hesitated, her eyes searching his face for reassurance. Remember the man I told you about? The one who scammed me? Her fingers tightened around the mug. His name's Darren Flynn. I didn't realize until it was too late that he was known for conning vulnerable people out of their money. He promised me a small art studio if I invested my portion of the divorce settlement. Marcus's stomach sank. He'd encountered Darren's name before, a rumor in business circles of a shady investor who preyed on the unsuspecting. Marcus had brushed off the warnings, but never imagined Darren would cross paths with Charlotte. After I discovered I'd been tricked, I confronted him, she continued, voice shaking. He threatened me, said he had connections, that if I kept causing trouble, I'd regret it. Rage coursed through Marcus. He had resources, lawyers, investigators. He could destroy someone like Darren if he chose to. Charlotte, why didn't you? She lifted a hand. Ask for help? I was humiliated, Marcus. I left you to be independent, to prove I could succeed on my own. How could I come crawling back for help after everything that happened? His chest tightened. Part of him wanted to track Darren Flynn down that very moment, to rectify the injustice that befell Charlotte, but he recognized that approach might only compound the chaos. He reached for her hand gently. She allowed it, though she kept her gaze on the floor. We'll deal with Darren, I promise. A flicker of hope passed over her features. I just want to feel safe, she whispered, tears trailing down her cheeks. In that moment, the tension between them, the ghosts of their past, softened. Marcus felt her pain acutely. He yearned to protect her, not as some philanthropic gesture, but out of a deeply rooted guilt and unresolved love. As the days passed, Charlotte regained some strength. With Dr. Martinez's guidance, she began a light exercise routine and changed her diet to restore her health. Though she was far from her former vitality, a spark of her old self slowly emerged. She spent afternoons in the penthouse's sunlit corner, sketching on stray sheets of paper doodles that hinted at her artistic flair. Marcus, meanwhile, struggled to balance his multi-million-dollar company and this personal upheaval. He found himself uncharacteristically distracted during board meetings, often checking his phone for updates on Charlotte or scanning social media for the latest swirl of gossip. His instincts told him the story wouldn't die down easily. The public was hooked on the emotional drama of a millionaire reuniting with his homeless ex-wife. In a world hungry for sensationalism, their saga was prime entertainment. One afternoon, a private investigator named Victor DeVoe, a tall, lean man in his 40s with silver streaks in his hair, arrived at Marcus's office. Marcus had hired him to gather information on Darren Flynn. They met in the sleek conference room overlooking the city. Victor laid out folders of documents, each containing evidence of Darren's scams. He's cunning, Victor explained. He uses multiple aliases, sets up shell companies, and targets people who come into money suddenly, like lottery winners or divorces involving large settlements. He's good at charming his way into their trust. Marcus's jaw clenched. He threatened Charlotte. I want him held accountable. Victor nodded. I've got enough evidence for a strong case, especially if your ex-wife is willing to testify. But we need to be careful. He's been known to retaliate. Marcus's anger simmered. I have the means to protect her. Victor studied him for a moment. Understood. I'll keep digging, but be prepared for pushback. That evening, Marcus returned to the penthouse with the folders. He found Charlotte curled up on the couch, flipping through her old sketchbooks. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. She looked up, noticing the tension in his expression. I have something to show you, he said softly, sitting beside her. He spread out the documents, explaining the extent of Darren's fraud. Her face paled as she recognized familiar details of her own ordeal in the patterns. And you want me to testify? She asked, glancing up at him. It could help put him away. But only if you're ready, Marcus replied, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Charlotte swallowed, eyes shifting to the window. The city lights twinkled, oblivious to her turmoil. I'm scared, she admitted quietly, but I don't want him to keep doing this to others. Marcus's phone buzzed, interrupting the moment. He glanced at the caller ID. Jonah, his driver. Jonah rarely called at odd hours unless there was a problem. Yes, Marcus answered, stepping away. Jonah's voice trembled. Sir, I just had a strange encounter downstairs. A man slipped me a note and said it was for Charlotte. He said he knows things about you both. Marcus felt a chill crawl along his spine. He pressed the phone to his ear. A note? What did it say? Jonah hesitated. It's a threat, sir. Says if you go after him, he'll release private photos and messages to the press. I think it might be that Darren Flynn. Marcus ended the call, rage coiling in his gut. He turned to Charlotte, who immediately sensed the shift in his demeanor. It's Darren, he managed, his voice tight. He's threatening us. Charlotte went pale, her shoulders sagging. Then maybe we should let it go, Marcus. If he drags us into more publicity, it's going to ruin you. You know how the internet is. Marcus inhaled deeply, trying to steady himself. I refuse to let him hold you hostage with these threats. Not again. She shook her head, tears forming. Marcus, I don't want you to get hurt. And I know how much your reputation means to you, your company. He silenced her with a look that carried more emotion than words could convey. You mean more to me, he said softly, than any reputation. I won't let him do this. The following week was a blur of anxious days and sleepless nights. Marcus fortified his security, ensuring that the building's staff were on high alert and that Charlotte never ventured out alone. News outlets continued their relentless coverage, with cameras flashing whenever he or Charlotte stepped outside. The rumor mill churned out theories. Was Charlotte manipulating Marcus for his money again? Was Marcus exploiting her story for pity points? Meanwhile, Darren Flynn was disturbingly quiet. No further threats appeared. No cryptic notes. No direct confrontations. This lull in his attacks only deepened their sense of dread. Marcus's legal team advised him that if Charlotte took the stand and pressed charges, the legal system could clamp down on Darren, but they needed her to be mentally prepared for the possibility of being cross-examined, of having her personal life dissected in court. One evening, as they sat in the warm glow of the penthouse's living room lamps, Charlotte asked a question Marcus never expected. Why are you doing all this for me? He paused, considering his words carefully. Because he stopped, heart pounding. Did he dare admit his lingering feelings, his regret for letting her slip away? Because I owe you, he finished lamely, unable to express the full truth. She studied him, tears threatening to spill. It's not just guilt, is it? Marcus closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. No, it's not. He reached for her hand, tentatively weaving his fingers through hers. I never stopped caring about you. Even when you left, He caught himself, the words tangling in his throat. Finally, he finished. I hated myself for pushing you away. They sat in silence, the hum of the city resonating outside. Charlotte was the first to break eye contact, gently pulling her hand away. Marcus, I'm not the person you used to know. And this, all of this, it's overwhelming. He nodded, accepting her boundaries. We'll take it one step at a time. Later that night, a new storm erupted online. Anonymous accounts began posting screenshots of personal text messages allegedly between Marcus and Charlotte from years ago. The messages painted a picture of a crumbling marriage, featuring their worst fights and Charlotte's pleas for attention. Some messages were real, while others appeared doctored to make Marcus look callous and Charlotte manipulative. The internet devoured the scandal, and #Marcus and Charlotte trended on multiple platforms. When Marcus discovered the leaked texts, his blood ran cold. He rushed to show Charlotte, who burst into tears at the invasion of privacy. They sat together, scrolling through the malicious posts, each new revelation slicing deeper into old wounds. "It has to be Darren," Charlotte whispered, voice shaking. "He must have hacked my old phone or something." Marcus slammed his laptop shut. "Enough," he growled. "We're going to the police, first thing in the morning. I'm done letting him ruin your life, our lives." The next day, accompanied by Victor DeVoe, Marcus and Charlotte drove to the Sycamore Falls Police Department. A throng of reporters lay in wait, cameras flashing incessantly. They escorted Charlotte protectively, shielding her from the intrusive lenses. Inside, they met with Detective Helena Bishop, a stern, no-nonsense investigator with a sharp gaze. Charlotte recounted her story in a trembling voice, how Darren tricked her, threatened her, and possibly orchestrated the leaks. She admitted she had no solid proof of his direct involvement in posting the texts, but emphasized the pattern of his threats. Detective Bishop took notes, meticulously, promising a thorough investigation. Before they left, Detective Bishop lifted her eyes to Charlotte. "I appreciate your courage. We'll gather what we need to build a case." Charlotte's nod was barely perceptible. Marcus squeezed her hand in silent support. Outside, the paparazzi bombarded them with questions. "Charlotte, are you suing Marcus for alimony? Marcus, did you exploit your ex-wife's homelessness for PR? Do you still love each other?" Their security detail pushed back the reporters, and they managed to slip into the waiting SUV. The car lurched forward, leaving behind a cacophony of camera shutters and shouted questions. Back at the penthouse, Charlotte collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't live under this spotlight anymore." Marcus knelt beside her. "I'll handle the press. You just focus on getting better. We'll get through this." She looked up, tears staining her cheeks. "Why do you even care about what people think?" "It's not just about me," he replied, voice gentle. "I don't want them to tear you apart, or tarnish what remains of your dignity." She closed her eyes, exhaling a long, unsteady breath. "I wish I could disappear. None of this would be happening if I hadn't crossed paths with you again." The words cut him to the core, but he swallowed his hurt and sat beside her, placing an arm around her shoulder. "I'm not letting you face this alone," he murmured, uncertain whether it was the right thing to say but meaning every word. As the legal gears began to turn, social media's relentless gossip machine continued to churn. Overnight, a scathing blog post went viral. It depicted Charlotte as a gold digger who left her husband when he was poor and came crawling back once he got rich. It mixed fact with fiction, weaving an inflammatory tale that garnered millions of views and comments. Hateful messages flooded Charlotte's old social media accounts. Strangers berated her for exploiting Marcus, while others attacked Marcus for shaming a helpless woman for publicity. Marcus's PR team scrambled to control the narrative, releasing a short statement. "Mr. Holbrook's focus is on supporting Miss Green's well-being during her difficult time. We request respect for their privacy." But the statement only fueled speculation. "What are they hiding?" demanded headlines. Charlotte was devastated. Each hate-filled comment tore at her fragile self-esteem. Marcus tried to keep her away from the toxic noise, but it was everywhere: television, radio, online articles. One afternoon, she suffered a panic attack, collapsing into tears on the penthouse floor, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Marcus rushed to her side, draping his arms around her trembling frame. "Breathe, Charlotte," he murmured, cradling her gently. "You're safe here." She clung to him, her fingers digging into his shirt. After a few minutes, her breathing steadied. She pulled back, eyes red and swollen. "I'm sorry," she whimpered. I can't take it." "It's okay," Marcus whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "We'll find a way out of this." That same evening, an unexpected visitor arrived at the penthouse. Andrea Holbrook, Marcus's mother. She swept in, all sharp angles and poised dignity, her pearl necklace clinking softly as she extended her arms to her son. Andrea had never hidden her reservations about Charlotte, partly due to the speed of their youthful marriage. Yet the older woman's eyes brimmed with concern as she pulled Charlotte into an awkward embrace. "Marcus told me what happened," Andrea said, her voice surprisingly gentle. "I came to see if I can help." Charlotte stiffened, memories of their frosty relationship surfacing, but she forced a polite smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Holbrook." Andrea patted her hand. "I know we've had our differences, dear, but no one deserves what you're going through." Marcus watched the scene, relief and apprehension intertwining in his gut. He knew his mother could be fiercely protective when she chose. Perhaps her arrival signaled a turning point, a force that might help deflect the vicious gossip. He could only hope. With Andrea's support, Marcus and Charlotte found a bit of breathing room. Andrea publicly defended Charlotte in an impromptu press statement captured by local news, labeling the rumors disgusting lies. She painted a heartfelt picture of a woman who had once been part of her family and now needed compassion. Surprisingly, the public response was mixed. Many softened their stance, while others accused Andrea of being another pawn in a grand PR strategy. But at least the media's focus started to scatter to newer stories, giving Charlotte a semblance of peace. Behind closed doors, Marcus's legal team finalized a lawsuit against Darren Flynn, attaching sworn affidavits from other victims. Charlotte agreed to testify, though anxiety consumed her at the prospect of facing him in court. Detective Bishop's investigation corroborated much of Charlotte's account, and a hearing date was set. The night before the hearing, Charlotte paced around the living room, unable to sleep. Marcus found her at the window, staring into the city lights. She seemed lost in their flicker. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly. She turned, hugging herself. "I keep thinking about tomorrow," facing him, reliving everything. Marcus moved closer, gently placing a hand on her back. "I'll be right there with you." She nodded, drawing in a shaky breath. "Marcus," she said, voice taut, "thank you for everything." He caught the hesitation in her tone. "What is it?" A tear trickled down her cheek. "I still don't know where I stand with you. My life it's such a mess. I don't have anything to give you." He exhaled, brushing away the tear with his thumb. "I'm not asking for anything. We'll figure it out, together." For a moment, their gazes locked in an unspoken moment of closeness. Shadows of the past loomed in their minds, memories of laughter, of heartbreak, of everything that once drove them apart. The uncertain future wove itself between them, fragile and full of possibilities they could neither grasp nor deny. The hearing took place in a modest courtroom with fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly. Marcus and Charlotte sat at the plaintiff's table with their lawyer, a calm, middle-aged woman named Felicia Weaver. Across the aisle sat Darren Flynn, flanked by his own legal counsel. He wore a smug grin, his dark hair slicked back, and radiated an oily charm that made Marcus's skin crawl. The proceedings began with statements from Felicia, presenting evidence of Darren's fraudulent activities. She outlined the pattern of deception, the false contracts, and the threats. Charlotte took the stand, her voice trembling as she recounted how Darren preyed on her vulnerability post-divorce, promising to help her establish a studio. She described the day she realized the money was gone, her attempts to confront him, and his threats to ruin her. Darren's attorney countered that Charlotte had invested willingly, that no formal contract existed beyond a handshake agreement, and that any threats were exaggerated or fabricated. They alluded to Charlotte's homelessness, insinuating she was desperate for money, and thus inventing accusations to pressure Darren. Marcus gritted his teeth, fury boiling beneath his stoic exterior. He wished he could take the stand and demolish Darren's defense, but Felicia had advised him to remain a quiet observer. They already had enough evidence without him complicating the narrative. Midway through the hearing, Darren himself took the stand. He painted a picture of Charlotte as a reckless dreamer who funneled her divorce settlement into a failing art project, then blamed him when it collapsed. "I tried to help her," he said, feigning sincerity. "I introduced her to potential investors, but she refused to follow through. When the money ran out, She accused me of stealing. Now she's using her ex-husband's influence to slander me. Marcus clenched his fists under the table. Charlotte glared, her cheeks flushing with anger. If not for Felicia's calming hand on her arm, Charlotte might have risen to protest. But she stayed silent, waiting for her attorney's rebuttal. At the end of the hearing, the judge deemed there was enough evidence to move forward with a trial. Darren was released on bail, smirking as he exited the courtroom. On the steps outside, reporters swarmed him like vultures. He offered sound bites dripping with false concern. "I just hope Miss Green finds peace. It's sad she's resorting to defamation with Mr. Holbrook's money." Marcus and Charlotte slipped out a side entrance, hearts pounding. The battle was far from over. The day after the hearing, hashtags about Marcus and Charlotte resurged on social media. #team. Charlotte's supporters lauded her bravery, praising her fight against a con artist. Others, under #Team Darren, claimed she was a liar exploiting the legal system for revenge. A new wave of rumors claimed Charlotte was blackmailing Marcus for financial support, pointing to her living in his penthouse. As proof, Charlotte curled up on the couch, reading through the posts, despite Marcus's pleas for her to avoid them. Each hateful message seemed to chip away at her fragile confidence. Finally, she tossed her phone aside, tears brimming in her eyes. "I can't keep living like this," she murmured. Marcus sat beside her, the cushions sinking under his weight. "We can release a statement, tell the world the truth." She let out a bitter laugh. "What truth?" "That I once left you because I felt suffocated. And now, I'm back under your roof. That I trusted the wrong person and ended up on the street." He gently took her hand. "That you're a person who made mistakes, who's trying to rebuild her life, and doesn't deserve to be torn apart by strangers." He paused, meeting her gaze. "And that I care about you, deeply." The vulnerability in his voice made her blink. She opened her mouth but hesitated, uncertain how to respond to a confession that blurred the lines they'd maintained. Emotions swirled relief, longing, guilt, fear. She settled on a whisper, "Thank you." In that moment, Andrea Holbrook entered the living room, carrying a tray of tea. She set it down, carefully avoiding intruding on their intimacy. "Darling," she said softly to Charlotte, "sometimes the only way out of a scandal is to face it head on." Charlotte gave a humorless smile. "Easier said than done." Andrea nodded, sympathy shining in her eyes. "I know, but it may be time you told your side of the story, to more than just the court. The public might be more receptive than you think." After considerable debate, Charlotte agreed to give an exclusive interview to Anna Caldwell, the reporter Marcus had once turned away at the door. Anna was known for her respectful approach, and she'd persisted in offering a platform for Charlotte to speak. In a neutral setting, an elegant but understated hotel lounge, Charlotte sat with Anna while cameras recorded. Marcus watched from the sidelines, heart pounding. The interview began gently, with Anna asking about Charlotte's background in art, her marriage to Marcus, and what led to their divorce. Charlotte answered, her voice trembling at first, gradually gaining confidence as she recounted how she and Marcus drifted apart. She candidly admitted her regrets, tears forming when she described how she ended up homeless. Anna leaned forward. "Charlotte, many people online claim you're manipulating Marcus for his money. What would you say to that?" Charlotte took a deep breath. "I understand why they might think that. I left him at the height of his success. I wanted to stand on my own, but I failed. I was scammed, ended up on the street, and never asked him for a thing. He found me there and offered help. That's the truth." Anna's expression softened. "What would you like people to know? Above all else?" Charlotte glanced at Marcus, who gave her a small nod of encouragement. "I want them to know I'm just a human being who made mistakes. That you can have dreams and still lose everything. I never intended to drag Marcus into this mess. I'm grateful he saved my life literally." Anna thanked her, and the interview wrapped. Marcus exhaled in relief. He stepped forward to guide Charlotte out. She looked exhausted but somewhat lighter, as though she'd set down a heavy burden. The interview aired the next evening, It garnered millions of views, trending within hours. This time, the wave of comments seemed more empathetic. While trolls still lurked, a tide of supportive messages emerged, praising Charlotte's honesty and vulnerability. Some criticized Marcus for letting their marriage fall apart, but the overall sentiment was that Charlotte was a victim of circumstances and manipulative scammers. Marcus caught Charlotte reading the comments with a watery smile on her face. She glanced up, meeting his gaze. Maybe this will help," she said, voice trembling with cautious hope. He returned her smile, heart warm. "I think it already has." Months passed, and the full trial against Darren Flynn began. This time, the stakes were higher. Charlotte, other victims, and even some of Darren's former associates testified in detail. The prosecution laid out bank records, forged documents, and threatening emails. Darren's defense tried to discredit each witness, but the evidence was overwhelming. Throughout the proceedings, Marcus remained at Charlotte's side. The media frenzy had mellowed somewhat, overshadowed by bigger national stories, but they still faced scrutiny. Detective Bishop's thorough investigation bore fruit. The paper trail led directly to Darren. After days of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on multiple counts of fraud and extortion. The judge sentenced Darren to several years in prison, ordering restitution to his victims. As the gavel slammed down, Charlotte clasped Marcus's hand, tears streaming down her face. Relief washed over her. A sense of justice finally served. Outside the courthouse, Andrea and Jonah waited, smiling with genuine pride. Charlotte stepped into the sunlight, feeling lighter than she had in years. Reporters rushed forward, but security held them back. She caught a snippet of a question shouted from the crowd. "Charlotte, what's next for you and Marcus?" She glanced at him, heart pounding. Their futures were intertwined again in ways neither had expected. "I'm not sure yet," she managed, meeting Marcus's gaze with a tentative smile. Back at the penthouse, the mood was almost celebratory. Andrea insisted on making a home-cooked meal roast chicken, buttery mashed potatoes, and fresh salad. They gathered around the dining table, an odd semblance of family, despite the tumultuous circumstances. Halfway through dinner, Charlotte lifted her glass of sparkling water. "I want to make a toast." She looked around at the table, Andrea's reassuring smile, Jonah's kind nod, and Marcus's steady gaze. "Thank you all for giving me a second chance at life. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I couldn't have done it without you." They clinked glasses, the moment tinged with both celebration and uncertainty. Later, Marcus walked Charlotte to the guest room. It had been her sanctuary for months, though it was starting to feel less like a guest room and more like a part of her life. Charlotte turned at the threshold, studying his face. "Marcus, there's something I need to say." He waited, heart thudding. She stepped closer, her voice low. "I still feel guilty about how our marriage ended. I can't just forget the past, but I also can't deny that you've been incredible. And her voice caught. "I feel something. I'm just afraid of repeating old mistakes." Marcus reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm scared too, but I'm willing to try if you are." Her eyes filled with tears, and she nodded slowly. It wasn't a grand reconciliation or a dramatic, sweeping kiss, but it was a quiet acceptance that they still mattered to each other, that perhaps they could build something new on the ashes of what once was. Despite the trial's conclusion, the internet remained sharply divided about Marcus and Charlotte's relationship. Some corners of social media embraced the redemption arc, celebrating the fact that Charlotte overcame homelessness and that Marcus showed compassion. Others refused to be swayed, labeling it all a fairy tale for publicity. Podcasts debated their motives. Articles analyzed their body language and photos, and a late-night talk show even featured a comedic sketch poking fun at the will they or won't they drama. For Marcus and Charlotte, it was both surreal and invasive, but they found solace in each other's company. One morning, Charlotte woke up early and made her way to the penthouse balcony. The city sprawled below, bathed in the golden hues of sunrise. Marcus soon joined her, two steaming mugs of coffee in hand. They sipped quietly, letting the moment speak for itself. She turned to him. Is this always going to be our life? The world watching, judging? He slid an arm around her waist, pulling her gently into his side. Maybe for a while. But we don't have to live for them. We can live for ourselves. Charlotte leaned her head against his shoulder, a small smile curving her lips. The morning sky stretched before them, a canvas of limitless possibility. After everything that happened, the heartbreak, the struggle, the controversy, they stood on the cusp of a new chapter. In the weeks that followed, Charlotte slowly regained her footing in the world. She visited local galleries, tentatively reintroducing herself as an artist. She found a small workshop space to create new pieces. Each time Marcus caught her with paint-splattered fingers, an unguarded smile on her face. He felt a swell of joy and admiration. Their relationship remained cautious. They no longer lived in separate worlds, but they were keenly aware of the mistakes that had once torn them apart. Therapy sessions helped both individual and couples therapy. They spoke openly about the nightmarish breakdown of their marriage, the resentments, the unspoken grief. Marcus also reevaluated his life. He took a step back from the frenetic pace of his company, delegating more responsibilities to trusted executives. For the first time, he embraced the idea that success wasn't solely tied to personal sacrifice. He made time for Charlotte, for dinners, for moments of quiet reflection that once seemed frivolous to him. The public eye never fully looked away. A paparazzo here, an article there, but the intensity waned, overshadowed by newer scandals. Over time, #Marcus and Charlotte turned into a footnote in the ever-churning social media world. Spring arrived with a flourish of blooms across Sycamore Falls. One sunny afternoon, Marcus guided Charlotte into the passenger seat of his car, an excited twinkle in his eyes. She was curious he'd told her he had a surprise. They drove to the outskirts of town, passing rolling hills and quaint farms. Eventually, they parked by a large, run-down barn with chipped red paint and overgrown grass. Charlotte stepped out, her brow furrowed in confusion. "What is this place?" Marcus grinned. "I bought it." She blinked in astonishment. "You bought a barn?" He chuckled. "It's not just a barn. There's a small cottage behind it. You can renovate this space into an art studio if you want. We could restore the cottage too. It's private, away from the noise of the city. A fresh start." Tears welled in her eyes as she approached the barn, running a hand over the rough wooden planks. 100 possibilities danced in her imagination. She turned back to Marcus, her chest tight with gratitude. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll build something here," he replied softly, stepping closer. "Something that's truly yours. And if you want me to be part of it, I'd be honored." She threw her arms around him, burying her face against his chest. As tears spilled, he held her close, the tall grass swaying in the gentle breeze around them. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time, they both felt a cautious, exhilarating hope. Thank you for joining us on this emotional roller coaster of love, loss, and second chances. Marcus and Charlotte's journey shows how unexpected twists can bring us face to face with our past, and how true courage lies in confronting our regrets with compassion. Homelessness, betrayal, and the relentless spotlight of the internet tested them in ways they never imagined, but ultimately, it was their willingness to stand together that paved the way for healing and a new beginning. If you found yourself moved by their story, please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more deep-diving tales that explore the resilience of the human spirit. Your support helps us continue bringing you powerful stories of hope, redemption, and the unbreakable bonds that hold us together, even in the face of life's greatest storms.